was chiropractic, I sat down and came up with 6 of them. And the one that I'm going to talk about today might surprise you. There's some secrets about the human body that a lot of doctors don't tell their patients about. And we're going to talk about how those two things interrelate in this One Belly Wednesday. I'm Dr. John Edwards. I'm going to be talking today about rest. So when I have 6 principles that I guide our decision-making process about how we run our practice, about how I care for patients, and I use those in every day, the most important one to me right now is our 5th principle, which is rest. So when I talk to people about this, I say, number 1 is you got to eat real food. Number 2 is I want you to learn something every day. Number 3, play often. Number 4, get adjusted. Number 5, rest. And number 6 is engage in love and gratitude. Have good loving relationships. All 6 of those were things that I came up with that told me about an evidence base on better immune system function, better nervous system function, longevity. They're the guiding principles that I use every single day with every single patient, with every single business decision that I make in helping to make our commitment to help people live healthier, more satisfying lives, to help kids stay more connected, to help parents get more energy, to help with better boring births, honestly. We want those nice, easy labors, nice, easy, breezy pregnancies. All of those principles go into all the decisions that I make when I am someone's healthcare provider. And I want you to know something, which is that I believe strongly in quote unquote, taking my own medicine. The most important thing for me is to be congruent in what I tell people to do for their own healthcare and what I do for myself. And so last week, you noticed there was no One Belly Wednesday. It's because I was on vacation. I make sure that I take some time out every single year to get away. And I love going up to Colorado. My family lives up there. My parents, during part of the year, they have an RV. And I went up there. Dr. Danielle and I, we went with our families. And we just had a great week just away. What I love about Estes Park, the place that I was, is that I don't really have cell phone signal. I don't really have Wi-Fi access. I have to literally turn off all the things because I just don't get reception. And I'll tell you, in a time right now, like we're looking at before an election year cycle, I'm reminded about a piece of advice that I got out of a book that's called The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. So one of the things that Ferriss said that I thought was crazy at the time was that he never reads the newspaper, he never watches TV news. I thought that was insane because I am an NPR junkie. Like I love reading the news. I read the newspaper. At the time, I was reading it every single day. And what I was moving to after I listened to him explain the why was a very conscious consumption of media and news and information. And I'll tell you, since the time I read that book, and we're talking over a decade ago, the amount of the 24-hour news cycle, the instantaneous deluge, the avalanche of information that comes to you through your news feed, whether it's through Instagram, through Facebook, or any of the platforms that you use, it's just insane. And it can really get overwhelming. And you can really go down a spiral with that. In fact, the CDC, when we first started talking about the Great Pause, they recommended that people get off of social media. They're finding it causes you anxiety. And so you'll notice that every once in a while, I'm just not around online. You don't see posts from me, you don't see comments from me, and that's because I'm taking a break too. I try to really follow the things that I advise other people to do. And it's tough. Like when Tim was talking about it, and I went, how do you stay informed? He said something really interesting. What he does is he has friends. He has friends that he knows are really up on things. And so what he does is he just talks to his friends. If he thinks that he's missing out on something, he says, so catch me up. What's been going on the last month? You'll be surprised, like absolutely surprised. The things that come up in great big headlines that are the emergency of the day, that really, given a month, don't really seem to matter a whole lot. I mean, this is even as, I was such a big sports fan. So I wanted to know who was winning the playoff games, who is ahead in the regular season, how many goals so-and-so scored. I wanted to know all that stuff. Now, honestly, I might watch playoffs for most of the sports, maybe a couple games. I'll usually try to watch a championship here or there, mainly for my own interest. I actually had to get out of football. I was finding that I was so obsessed with what was going on Sundays that I would spend the rest of the week thinking about what had happened during the game and then ramping up for the next game. I would even during the off season do all the scouting and It was just like so consuming for my life. And there are honestly a lot of other things that I actually have control over that have been a lot more fulfilling for me, which really decreased my stress levels. So when we talk about things like resting, and we're talking about things like how the body actually rests more than it works, people are surprised to think about things like this. I'll give you one instance. So if you think about how much you should be sleeping, so on the average, most American adults get between 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. If you think about that in a 24-hour cycle, what that means is that for a full quarter to a third of your life, you're not working. You're not even awake. You're completely asleep in bed a third of the time. Even more amazing, I want you to think about the heart for a second. So if you think about a heartbeat, it goes dun, 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 as the heart squeezes the blood out and then relaxes, and squeezes the blood out and relaxes. Do you know that the heart actually doesn't work for 2/3 of your lifetime? Doesn't work at all. That's a huge surprise. Like, you would think that your heart is one of those organs that's constantly working, right? But it actually takes breaks for most of your entire life. It's just chilling. The other really interesting thing about rest is that way before we got super into using drugs for a lot of illnesses, there was something that used to happen that they would call convalescent homes. So let's say that you had, let's go way back to tuberculosis. Let's go back to things like heart attacks. Let's go back to things like strokes. What they would do is they would put you up someplace, somewhere usually in the mountains, because you can still find these up here. Air's a little cleaner, you got a little more access to vitamin D. And they would set people outside, and that's all you do in your little chair. You sit there, you read 1920s, 1930s. That's how they healed people, is that they would use the power inside your own body. They would give you food. They would get you clean air. They would get you out and do some exercise for like 6 months. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine now in today's culture that having a doctor say, listen, you're going to need to rest for the next half of a year. People would lose their minds. You go, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay for my car? How am I going to raise my family? If they were told that they just had to go away and chill out for 6 months, it was unheard of in today's culture. But it's exactly how we took care of people. I like bringing that up. I'm reminded every time I go up to Estes Park because there's a hotel there called the Stanley Hotel. And that's exactly the story behind the Stanley, is that the guy who invented a steam-driven car, his name was Stanley, he went up there. He had TB. He's from San Francisco. And he went up. They thought he was going to die. But he was out there resting and ended up getting his health back. It was such a powerful experience for him that what Stanley decided to do was build a hotel for his friends and his family so that every year people could come up and spend the summers up there in Estes Park, or they could go out and ski in the wintertime. He found that being out in nature was so therapeutic for him that he wanted to pass that message on to other people as well. And so I get reminded about that every time I go up there. The Stanley's this, if you've ever seen The Shining, this was actually the hotel that Stephen King was inspired by. They now say it's haunted and things like that. So I also kind of think that's cool, like geek out about stuff like that. But it's the whole principle behind the idea that here's this great big white building out, isolation in the middle of winter and nobody else is around, that as an actual introvert, that kind of appeals to me a little bit. I kind of always wanted to have a cabin up there in the mountains and just shut off for a while. It's one of the things that really helps my mental health, it helps my physical well-being, and even like that spiritual renewal of connecting in with nature too, I think is important. There's some good bonding time with my family, and I was really grateful to be able to take that. So take that rest message, take that into consideration over the next week. Where are the places where you can decide, hey, listen, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to just kind of say, I don't need to know about that this week. Where are the places where you can just take your breaks, even if they're 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, where you can have some quiet time for yourself to reconnect with yourself, to reconnect with your body, to reconnect with your mind, to reconnect with your spirit. It really does make a difference. We're living in a very stressed out time right now. The antidote for stress is actually also going to be something that's cumulative. It has to build. You have to be able to find those moments of rest on a regular basis in order to find the antidote for that kind of anxiety and stress and the overwhelm sensation that a lot of people in my office are dealing with. So if you found this message useful, I want you to share it. I want you to share it on social media. I want you to send it out on Facebook or Instagram, wherever you're finding this. I want you to tell other people about this message too. It's the reason why I do One Belly Wednesdays, is to help new parents, parents who are pregnant, parents of children under 1, help manage some of the things that we're all going through right now. And so if you know somebody like that, I'd be happy to spread that message to them too.